One day I was getting mail from what looked to be a new mailman. He informed me when I was picking up the mail that he's the new mailman and the old one died of a heart attack. I had a bad feeling about this new mailman. I was sad for the old mailman, but I forgot about it a bit later. The next day, the odd new mailman dropped off more mail. I was a bit creeped out as this time when he rang the doorbell, he was trying to open the door. Luckily, it was locked. I, being creeped out, went to go tell my mom what had just happened. She went downstairs with me and the mailman had just dropped the mail off on our porch and didn't even bother putting it in the mailbox, then walked away. Of course, my mom didn't believe me, but this, sadly enough, wasn't the end of my story. Like always, the mailman came by the next day. This time he didn't try and open the door, so I opened the door and got the mail from him. He tried talking to me, but I avoided it because I didn't want to talk to a strange, creepy man who looked to be in his 40s. The very next day, we didn't receive any mail, even though we were expecting some, which me and my mom both found very strange. My mom had called her good friend and neighbor, and they had got their mail that day, but we didn't. Later that night, when I was in bed, I heard rustling in our backyard. Stupidly, I ignored it, thinking it was the wind or some kind of animal. I woke up later at around 2 a.m. in the morning to hear my mom screaming my name. I thought to myself, what the heck? And I ran downstairs and looked out the window and saw that it was the mailman. He was holding what looked like to be some kind of large knife. My mom told me to go upstairs and call the police immediately. I obeyed and I dialed 911 as I went up the stairs. I felt immediately relief as soon as I heard the operator's voice. I told them that my name is Dylan and I need the police to come to my house right away. The operator then asked me what the emergency was. I replied with, "Yeah, there's a man in all black outside of my house. It looks like he's holding a large knife." She then replied with, "Okay, police are en route to your location." She asked if he had broken into our house, and I responded with no, and she told us to stay locked in a room until the police came. Of course, that's exactly what my mom and I did. I felt the most relieved I have ever felt in my life when I heard the sirens. I ran downstairs to my mom being outside and the man getting arrested. I was absolutely terrified when he looked at me. He did this weird, crazy smile and huge grin. The next day, my mom had explained what had happened the night before. She had been woken up by this high-pitched scratch-sounding noise coming from downstairs, so she decided to go and see where the noise was coming from. That's when she saw the man with a large knife scratching the window with it and smiling. That's when she screamed my name. Luckily, he didn't get inside and instead got arrested, but to that creepy mailman, I really hope and pray that neither me or my mom ever see you again. I'm 31 years old now, but I was 16 when this happened. My name is Kevin, and her name is Lily. The story takes place in North Alabama. It all started out with me meeting a girl on MySpace named Lily. She was a cheerleader and she was very beautiful. I was 16 and she was 15. We talked for a long time and she kept making excuses as to why she couldn't meet me. She said it was her stepdad as to why she couldn't meet. She had a cousin named Dallas, and I noticed Dallas liked talking to me a lot online when I would talk to Lily. I would tell him a lot of personal stuff about how Lily would always make excuses as to why she couldn't meet up. I worked at a grocery store and I would lie to my parents sometimes and take off work to go see Lily, and she always stood me up every time. It was about 6 months later after we initially started, and I was talking to Lily on lunch at work one day, and we talked for about 10 minutes when all of a sudden her stepdad got on the phone and told me if I ever talked to Lily ever again that he would call the cops on me. Lily was frantic and yelling at her stepdad in the background and telling him to stop while crying. Lily would message me saying how she loved me and how she wanted to be with me forever. I went about a month without talking to her, and we finally started talking again. I loved this girl with all of my heart. I would always try and text her and pick her up at high school, and she wasn't there. I found out that her stepdad picks her up from school, and she was afraid to tell me. Apparently, her stepdad also kept her on the phone until the first bell rang at school every morning. One day I tried to meet her again, and I showed up at her house, and her stepdad came out of the house holding a shotgun in his hand. He then pointed it at me and said if I didn't leave, he'll blow my head off. Well, I left, and Lily was in the yard screaming and crying. She was yelling my name, and it was heartbreaking to me. I was this close to her, but I couldn't hold her in my arms, and it tore me apart. Well, I got back in my car, and then I drove about 5 miles away. I pulled in a gas station and just started crying uncontrollably. I had just recalled that Dallas has been talking to me on and off the entire time Lily and I had started talking. So after about 13 months, I got a text message from her and she said she wanted to meet up. I was a bit hesitant because all of the other times she stood me up. Well, I decided to proceed with this meeting because she swore to me she would meet me. I was in a Walmart parking lot waiting for her to show up, and an old white Ford F-150 truck pulled up. It was her. Her and a man got out of the truck, and I was just thinking, what is going on? Lily then told me that this was her real dad. I told him hey and that it was nice to meet him, and he said likewise. Well, Lily got into my car and then we kissed and hugged. It was the most amazing feeling ever. We rode to her house, which was about 20 miles away, with her dad following us in the truck. We got back to their place and her stepmom and Lily's sister was there, and I got to meet them. Her stepmom didn't like me at all. I couldn't stand her either. Lily's sister was kinda weird and she didn't say much. Lily and I went into the bedroom and watched some TV. We cuddled and kissed while we were watching TV. I noticed how Lily wasn't as skinny as she used to be, but I didn't pay it much attention. About a month later, I began to notice Lily's belly getting bigger, and I then asked her dad if something was going on. Her dad would call me son because he really liked me. He said that he wanted to go on the porch and tell me something, and that's when he told me Lily was pregnant. I totally freaked out, and I didn't know what to think. He said that he knew it wasn't mine because Lily is about 5 months pregnant, and it has to be her stepdad's. Her dad then told me that Lily had apparently called him one day at school and told him to pick her up and that she needed to live with him. Lily then told him that she thought she was pregnant, and if Steven found out Lily was pregnant, he would kill the baby. And in case I forgot to mention, Steven is the name of her stepdad. I decided to go into the house and question Lily all about this, and she broke down in tears. That's when she told me. She said yes, it's true that she's pregnant. She told me that Steven has been raping her for 4 years. She told me that she loves me with all of her heart and she hopes that I don't leave her. To see the hurt in her eyes, it made me hurt so bad, and I knew I couldn't leave her. I then stayed over for about 2 more hours while Lily and I talked about how she didn't mean to stand me up all of those times, and she was so sorry. I told her it was okay, and we cuddled some more. Well, since she was pregnant, they had to tell DHR, and that meant that when Lily and I went on a date, she would have to bring her little sister along. Lily and I literally never got any privacy. One day, DHR called me up and said they would like to speak to me about this case to see what I knew about Lily and her stepdad. I never went because I was pretty scared to go. I decided to talk to Lily and tried my best to get her to give up the baby, but she wouldn't. We went into the drive-in one night, and her little sister went to the bathroom. Lily and I had done a few sexual things while her sister was gone. About 3 months later, when Lily was about 8 months pregnant, we went to a Mexican restaurant with her little sister. We had a few general conversations, and I then brought up how was Dallas, because I haven't heard from him in a while, and Lily's sister had a puzzled look on her face, and then said, who's Dallas? Lily also had a weird look on her face, like she had been caught. I knew right then and there that Dallas was really Steven. I kinda figured it was him this entire time. The meal went good after that, but it was still a little weird. About a week later, it was my 17th birthday, and I went to Lily's house. Only Lily and her sister were there. We didn't really care that her sister was in the next room with her door open. We went into Lily's room and I lost my virginity. It was incredible. We watched TV and later we went out to eat. I got back home and I then started thinking, if she was raped, how was she so open to sexual stuff? Well, in October of that year, she gave birth to her son and we named him Tony. I was actually there with her when she gave birth in the room, and it actually felt like for a moment like I was going to be the dad, even though I wasn't the biological dad. My name wasn't on the birth certificate either. After she had Tony, she started acting really different. It was like she was kicking me to the curb pretty much, and about a month and a half later, I told her I couldn't do this anymore. She was heartbroken. I just couldn't do it anymore, and I told her that was it. Now, let me tell you why I couldn't do it. I knew she wasn't actually raped, or she wouldn't have wanted to actually have sex with me. I basically figured out that she apparently knew every time Dallas, aka Steven, was talking to me. I thought about all of this, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I just feel like she lied to me for about 17 to 18 months and was just using me. Side note, I did go to her dad's house a year later, and her dad looked amazed to see me there. He told me Lily was in her room, but she didn't want to speak to me right now. He gave me Lily's number, and I called Lily up about 30 minutes later, but she didn't seem interested anymore. By the way, I still don't actually know if she was raped or not. I just don't think she was. But if she was, Steven was never arrested, so he's running free. 14 years later, I've been married for 6 years to the best woman a man could ever ask for, and I've got a happy life. I know this story isn't exactly creepy like your typical Let's Not Meets, but it's one of the craziest things I ever went through. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I really appreciate it. Back in 2005, I lived in our family home with my husband and our 3 children. They were ages 5, 7, and 14. This is important as they've all told me parts of the story I will include later. For about 2 weeks, my house just seemed to go crazy. We had just fully gutted and remodeled our main bathroom. We only had a 1-story house and a basement, half bath in the basement. My husband worked night shift and wasn't around or was asleep during the activity. Little idea of how the bathroom was set up. When you walk in the door, the tub was on the left with the sink directly across from it. Past them both, and there was a small wall between the tub and toilet. Not a very big bathroom. The first night that I noticed the activity, I had been online chatting till about 2 a.m. I would then shower and go to bed as a routine, though this night would be quite different. I got offline and I got my shower. While I was in the shower, the curtain then blew as if someone opened the door. Figuring it was one of the kids, I watched the shadow of a figure that was a bit too tall to be one of the kids go past the tub. A bit confused, I then said, "Who's out there?" No one answered, so now thinking maybe hubby got off work early, I decided to poke my head out, but I didn't see anyone. I then got out of the shower and decided to look on the other side of the wall. It was empty. I didn't see anyone walk past the tub to leave or hear anyone. I rushed to get dressed, but the kids were sleeping and the doors are all still locked. Assuming I needed to get some sleep and stop playing horror survival games, I decided to go to bed. The next day, I decided to tell my husband after he woke up later in the afternoon, and he said I was just sleep deprived. I decided to just forget about it and went about my day. Again, I went about my nightly routine, and while in the shower, the curtain blew and a shadow passed the tub. Just as before, there was no one out there. This went on for about 2 weeks straight. Now, previously I mentioned the kids' ages because one day my 5-year-old daughter got fussed at for her stuffed toys and Beanie Babies all over her room. She had absolutely swore that someone was throwing them at her while she was sleeping. She was told to clean them up and then punished for lying. This happened a few more times. That is, till I realized she wasn't lying. She was an awful liar and she still is. She absolutely refused to sleep in her room after that. We decided to keep my scares and her scares between us and husband. During this same time, my oldest son, who was 14, kept asking me when did we get a black cat. I had no idea what he was talking about. Various evenings, if he was alone in the house, he would always see the cat run from one room to another, mainly ending in our room. Now, at this point in time, we didn't have any pets. Then, my 7-year-old son would complain about noises and whispering in his ear. I never got to see the cat's shadow or witness the toys flung around my daughter's room, but I did hear whispering and voices. It's pretty crazy when it's happening as you're trying to rationalize it but can't. Now, I don't know why it suddenly stopped, but all I can figure is that when we gutted our bathroom, we stirred up some energy. I blessed every single room, window, and doorway. My oldest son continued to see the cat's shadow until we moved a few years later. I again blessed every room in the house except for my oldest son's, who was now 17, as he didn't believe all of a sudden. The new house was quiet for me and the youngest 2 kids, but my oldest son would always tell me in the mornings that he would hear things in his room, and it felt like someone was right next to his ear taking a breath, getting ready to scream, and he would wake right then. After a few weeks, he finally allowed me to bless his room. No weird experiences with any events. It's been about 14 years since this all happened, and I still have no explanation for those experiences. But I promise, they were very real. For some background, my grandma used to live in the countryside, and this takes place when I was either 9 or 10. I'm now 15. My favorite part about going to her house was exploring the woods and walking down the long country road. It was winter, so the sun always went down pretty early. One of the times I was there, I decided to go for a nighttime walk. I walked further than I usually did, and I came across a house that was abandoned. I sat there for about a good 5 minutes trying to decide whether I wanted to go in or not. Eventually, I decided to go in. When I got in, there was nothing really special, just some pieces of broken house and furniture all around the floor. I heard no noise, so I decided to continue through the house. Eventually, I came across a room that I was about to enter. That is, until I saw about 5 or 6 people standing around what looked to be a dead rabbit in the middle of a circle, which looked to be drawn with something dark, which now I guess was blood, but to this day, I still don't really know. They were all wearing hoods, but not your stereotypical robe, just wearing sweatshirts with the hoods up. They didn't look at me, and before they could, I ran out of the house and ran the whole way home, which wasn't normal for me because I was pretty chubby back then, and I absolutely hated anything physical. Nothing else happened after that, but it's still one of the creepiest things I've ever come across. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And remember, if you have your own personal scary story that you'd like to send to me with me to narrate on my channel, be sure to submit it directly to my website at southerncannibal.com. And before we bring this video to a close, I just want to shout out all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 or more patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Babe Lincoln, Beryl S., Beth A., Kate E., Katrina T., Celeste S., Ellie S., Emily W., Heather B., Howard R., Joseph F., Lori J., Matthew B., Michael G., Steph L., Tammy S., Terry H., Too Etchy for You, and Victor F. Thank all of you so much for supporting me on Patreon. And if any of you would like to join these awesome people and also become a patron, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. Thank you everyone, and have a good one. And remember to always stay on.